This is An Economy of One with Gary Rathbun.
Joining me now is Sam Kazman. He's a general counsel for the Competitive Enterprise Institute. His op-eds and articles have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Washington Post, National Review. He's also appeared nationally broadcast programs such as the Today Show, Stossel, and the Washington Journal. Counselor, welcome to An Economy of One.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you spending a little time with us. I was pleased that my producer got a hold of you. Tell us a little bit. I've been reading a little. I'm certainly not a legal scholar by any means, but tell us a little bit about the subpoena that was issued for records from CEI.
Okay, this was hand-delivered to us last Thursday. It comes about 2 weeks after there was a ballyhooed press conference among about 7 state attorneys general up in New York, and they were announcing the formation of what they call Attorneys General United for Clean Power, and their guest celebrity spokesman on stage was Al Gore. So. Just from that alone, you know this is a very serious, well-founded, purely legal campaign with no relation to policy, right?
That's right.
And it looks like those attorneys general have divvied up the country into sections, and they may each be pursuing their own investigations. But the essential claim, which is focused on ExxonMobil but extends to anyone who they think may have been working in some manner with them, though I think it really goes beyond that, is that there's been deception going on in terms of not informing the public about the real, quote-unquote, risks of climate change. The documents, the subpoena addressed to us seeks just about everything we've done on that issue for a 10-year span that ended in 2007. And even though most of the items seem to be related to ExxonMobil, it really covers everything we've done on these issues, because it talks about any studies you may have done on how ExxonMobil products affect the climate. Well, since gasoline, if it has an effect on the climate, has that effect regardless of whether it's Mobil, Sunoco, or whatever. You know, they're asking for everything. Plus, they want all donor information from supporters who may have been supporting our climate and energy policy work directly or indirectly, and that really means anyone who gave anything to CEI, because that has been one of our issues. So we plan to oppose this on First Amendment grounds. We think this is an absolute outrage. It's attempting to stifle speech on a hotly debated issue, and the fact that it's hotly debated is just, you take a look at the very substantial number of scientists and policy analysts who differ with the claims that we face some catastrophe. And secondly, by going after our donors, we believe that's a very clear First Amendment violation as well, because there's a significant line of Supreme Court cases, starting with NAACP back in the 50s, when that organization had its donor list demanded by several states in the South. And it was clear, you know, once the contact info for the NAACP's donors became public, that would be the end of that organization, because the end result is intimidation. And so that also is a First Amendment issue in our views. So at this point, our plan is to vigorously fight this monstrosity.
You know, and one of the first thoughts that occurred to me as I was reading this is this is really no different than so many of the college campuses around trying to stifle free speech and having their little safe zones and something warm and fuzzy to hang on to. But this is our leaders. I mean, this is the attorneys general of several different states. They got a powerful pulpit, a lot of strength behind them in doing this as far as intimidation goes and free speech. I guess I don't understand. What do they think they have any say in climate change from the Attorney General standpoint?
look, if you were to ask them, they would publicly say, we are simply concerned with investigating the possibility of fraud. And I believe that is nonsense. I think they have the same agenda that Al Gore has, which is to shut down debate on this issue. And the fact is, there's debate raging on this. For example, for everything we've heard about the threats of storms, hurricanes, rising seas, just a few weeks ago, Warren Buffett, who is heavily involved in the reinsurance business, frankly stated in the last 15 years, we've seen no increase in the cost or frequency of severe weather events. And if that businessman doesn't see it, these guys have got to be staring at smoke coming from somewhere to claim that they do see it.
Now, the several things I read on CEI's website, it says that the subpoena came from Attorney General Claude Walker of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Is there any significance that the Virgin Islands Attorney General was the one issued this, or is it just happened to be his name on top?
Oh, no, this did come from him. He was one of the attorneys general present at this press conference. And, that press conference, I think it was in New York, was probably in Manhattan. Well, Manhattan also is an island. What are you going to say about that? But look, the Virgin Islands are claiming that because they're an island, they are peculiarly sensitive to the ravages of allegedly rising oceans and more intensive storms. But look, think about how this attorney general from the islands, from the Virgin Islands, gets around to other parts of the U.S. If he does not swim or row a boat or take a sailboat, he is using transportation means that are fueled by petroleum products.
Right.
And so I think this illustrates very succinctly just the hypocrisy involved in all this. You've got these people, be they attorneys general or politicians or celebrities, jet-setting around the country, around the world, stepping off airplanes, taking limousines to podiums where they then proceed to denounce fossil fuels. And the hypocrisies there is just incredible. It's as if, it's one thing for the aristocracy to have access to petroleum, but for the commoners, common people to do it, that puts it into a sin category.
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like I remember in recent history the EPA declared CO2 as a pollutant, and you and I are expelling that right now. I mean, we're polluting all the time, and it won't be long before the regulation goes to exhaling, I think.
Yeah, look, I think in a sense you've got the environmental equivalent of original sin, because the very first thing to come out of a newborn baby's mouth is a carbon dioxide. And, I think what's really at stake here is this attempt to demonize energy. Because the only real energy, the only practical energy, the only affordable energy we get comes almost entirely from fossil fuels. Once you demonize energy, I think you've got civilization by the throat. It's going to be it would open the door to huge increases on these fuels, huge tax increases on these fuels in the name of saving the planet. But all that really does is in turn fuel political grandstanding. And maybe we can afford it. I don't think we can. Right. But when it comes to the real victims here are people in developing countries, in countries like Africa, who currently, a lot of them, live in huts and they have these indoor, incredibly smoky, dirty, emitting fires that they use to cook and to heat. What they need more than anything else is access to affordable energy. They're the ones who are going to die as a result of this, but these folks won't see it because it's hard to see that when you're high up in a jet plane.
Right. My guest is Sam Kazman. He's a general counsel at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, a nonprofit think tank under attack for their views on climate change policy. Sam, what I read in a bunch of articles in preparing for you, and forgive me, I forget, was it a representative, a congressman, a senator, or was it one of these attorneys general that brought out the idea of a RICO investigation?
I think it was Senator Whitehouse.
Whitehouse, that was it.
Right, yeah, and this started to go strong sometime back during the summer. There have been calls. Attorney General Loretta Lynch is claiming she's discussed this with the FBI. And look, if there's any fraud going on here, it's among the proponents of the allegedly clean sources of energy, like solar power, which is incredibly heavily subsidized. You never hear from these folks when they pitch solar power anything about Solindra, Sun Energy, and any of the other of dozens taxpayer-supported solar firms that go bankrupt. You know, in my view, that's the real fraud. But you know, go back to this name of this new coalition, Attorneys General United for Clean Power. It should really be called AGs United for More Power, because that is all it is.
I got to write that down. I'm going to use that. You know, the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I mean, you're in my experience in reading through all your stuff and the website and stuff, you're pretty nonpartisan. I mean, you want to put the facts out there, and you are being attacked that you know, what these attorneys general are doing to you is what you've done to politicians and the governments and that kind of stuff. But a big difference between this subpoena and using a FOIA to look at our government, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, FOIA was enacted by Congress in order to let private citizens, advance government transparency. And lots of states have their own versions of FOIA as well, because that is a very popular purpose. Yes, we have filed FOIAs against government officials. Yes, we filed FOIAs against FOIA requests asking for documents with certain professors in academia, with certain scientists. But those are all government employees. They work at state-run or state-funded institutions. And if they're not if they're not government employees, they're not covered by FOIA. That's totally different than to have AGs come slamming down with subpoenas that demand a decade's worth of work while they make allegations about, you know, some conspiracy of criminal wrongdoing.
Yeah, it's just amazing the way they're using their power. But we're seeing that. I mean, my background's in the financial industry, and you know, Dodd-Frank, which kind of flies under the radar because of the Affordable Care Act, same kind of thing. I mean, it's intimidation. It's looking under everything, seeing shadows everywhere, and you're guilty until you can convince them or pay them enough that you're innocent.
Yeah, we're actually involved in a court challenge on the constitutionality of one huge aspect of Dodd-Frank, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau.
Right.
The lead plaintiff in that case is a tiny bank, all of $300 million worth of assets in Big Spring, Texas. And the day after our lawsuit was announced, they had a visit from their bank examiner wanting to know just how are they going to be paying for this lawsuit. Well, the answer was they were not going to be paying it because we're providing legal services pro bono. But the notion that, you know, some government official wants to know where are you getting the money to raise this challenge to my employer, that's a sort of frightening thing. Yeah. Most recently, you've had Elizabeth Warren saying that companies that publicly criticized some rule that was proposed by the Securities and Exchange Commission may be vulnerable to some investigation of whether they're defrauding their shareholders, right, solely because they filed critical comments in a public rulemaking. So this notion of just trying to shut up anyone who comes under this expanding umbrella of overregulation, I mean, that's becoming a damn powerful and very, very dangerous idea.
You know, and that's the kind of the definition of tyranny. I mean, several articles reference 1984 and Crime Think and that kind of stuff, and I can see that playing out. Well, Sam, it's been a real honor and a real pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate all your time. You're doing great work over to the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and I'm going to stay on top of this, and I hope we can give you a call again and get some updates.
Sure, and you know, if I could just leave you with one very lovely quote from this was from the official government censor back when the Sandinistas ruled Nicaragua, and they were shutting down one opposition paper after another. And the censor explained his role as following: the newspapers falsely accused us of suppressing freedom of expression. This was a lie, and we could not let them print it. Okay.
That's I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes that even Mao Zedong believed in freedom of speech, just not freedom after the speech.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for your time, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm Gary Rathbun. This is an Economy of One.